When pressing, actually this is just the most basic way to press. There are some variations because we have different handles. For example, we have this kind of handle, the W bar. As for the W bar, if you hold it like this, the inside is higher and the outside is lower, right? See? If you flip it over, then the outside is higher and the inside is lower, right? Do you know why it can rotate in a circle? It's designed so that whether you can't grip tightly on the outside or the inside, you can adjust it. If you can't grip tightly on the inside, just rotate it so the inside is higher and the outside is lower, and you'll be able to grip the inside better. If you can't grip tightly on the outside, rotate it again so the inside is lower and the outside is higher, and then you'll be able to grip the outside better. So a lot of people have used this thing for over 10 years without knowing how to actually use it. No one knows what this thing is actually for because even the instructors don't understand it and have never explained it to you. So then, why is it made like this? It's designed to make it easier for you to use. For example, if during a bicep curl you can't exert force with the base of your index finger, you just rotate it like this, and then your index finger will be able to apply force. If, during pressing movements, you can't exert force on the outer side and it's hard to generate power, then you raise it up on that side. It will provide support and allow you to generate force effectively. If you want to focus on using the inner part of your hand, grip it like this and raise it up, and then you'll be able to apply force there. This is the purpose of this handle, and it's also why it can rotate. At this point, you should choose how to grip it based on the specific needs of each member. However, if you're at the gym and you ask a member to do it this way, they might think you're a bit strange. Isn't that right? Usually, when using this handle, isn't this how you press down? Isn't it always done like this? And then you do it this way. If you feel uncomfortable yourself, what else could it be? The reason why there are grips inside and outside is based on the width of a person's shoulders and the flexibility of their shoulders. For example, if someone can't grip with their index and middle fingers on this side, in that case, if you turn it this way, it's higher on the inside, and then your index and middle fingers can grip it, but then their shoulders can't manage it. Like this. If someone has very good adduction but still can't bring their arms in, even after trying, once they do manage to bring them in, their shoulder blades tilt forward excessively. So at this point, you turn it like this and let them grip here. That works. Again, you raise the inside and lower the outside. So this method is for people with a smaller frame. This one, for people with good flexibility, is designed for those with a larger frame, as well as for patients or people who lack flexibility. That's why it has this kind of curvature. This is the difference between them. Many people, even those who have been coaches for years, might not realize this. Honestly, I don't know. If I just randomly take out this handle and ask you, as a coach, how do you use this handle? No one really knows how to use it. They just say it's for people whose wrists aren't very flexible. They say it's more wrist-friendly, but in reality, you don't actually know in what way it's friendly. So whether it's at our studio in Shanghai or our academy in Shenzhen, we have a huge variety of handles. These are meant for different people. You need to choose the right one. After you've chosen the right handle, even if your foundation isn't solid yet, you can still train very effectively with it. For example, if I want to do triceps pushdowns and I want the long head of the triceps to be well engaged, in this case, I need to make sure these two fingers on the outside exert more force. So at this point, besides stretching the long head of the triceps at the shoulder area, I also need to make sure these two fingers can apply force. Apply force. In this situation, I need to figure out how to get them to exert force. Either I raise them up with a pad, or I only grip with these three fingers. If I grip like this, I'm only using these three fingers. And then when I push down, then the long head of my hand will bear more force, or when I grip like this, I can raise the outer side with a pad. By padding up the inner side, the force distribution is better. The sunken area doesn't bear force well. However, this method requires your forearm's pronation function to be very good because when you pad up the outer side, it's equivalent to pronating even more. Do you understand? If a person's elbow joint doesn't function well and they can't pronate, then they can't do this movement. If they can't do this movement, just have them use the hammer grip or have them hold the handle on the outside, and that'll be fine. That's the difference between these methods. All right, so when pressing down with this straight bar, how do I make adjustments? If I specifically want to focus on training these three fingers right here, to make absolutely sure they can press down firmly, then I really need to do it exactly like this, carefully pressing down in this particular way. Pressing down. If I want to target the three fingers on the outside, then I have them press down like this. So just tilt it like this. At this point, the pivot is here. And after gripping it, this is exactly how you hold it. So when you press down at this point, your wrist is less likely to move out of place. But if I ask you to do a triceps push down now, and you end up using your back muscles to pull, then you're actually hanging it on the second segment, the phalanges. At this point, the main force is directed upward, so when you press all the way down, your wrist immediately flips over, and your strength can't be transferred to the triceps anymore. That's why many people, when they pull down, end up like this. So what triceps are you actually training? You're just stretching out your flexor tendons, your supporting ligaments, and all the joint capsule ligaments. And your strength simply can't be applied to the triceps at all. So especially when you're working with heavier weights, when you press down, you absolutely can't let your hands hang out in front. You have to keep them in the right position. It's interesting. So many gym members, when they're doing pulling movements to train their back, they use a pressing grip. When he's doing triceps pushdowns, he uses a pulling grip. I tell you to press down, but you grip it in front. Then when I tell you to pull, you grip it behind, completely reversed. How could you possibly build muscle that way? How could you possibly develop good muscle shape like that? The same goes for rehabilitation. If someone has very flexible wrists, or if it's their elbow joint and you want to train stability in the triceps, that's very important for the triceps. It's the largest muscle crossing the elbow joint, so once you strengthen it, your elbow joint becomes very stable. When you push, it's less likely to shift or wobble. In this situation, you have to use pressing force, so after you press down with this force, after pressing down, you need to look at this position and then at this handle. Its force comes from a rope pulling it, which is still centered on your forearm. If you do it like this, it moves to the front of your forearm. At this point, when you resist this force, you're actually resisting it with an external rotation. So all your training is here. What does that have to do with your triceps? In other words, after your hand is down, the rope is pulling it here, and even after passing through the rope, it's still on your forearm. So when I press down like this, you can't stand too far from the machine. If you're too far from the machine now, it turns into a force like this. And when you resist this kind of force, it becomes a much more difficult resistance to overcome. Then the main muscle working during your workout is no longer the triceps. Instead, you're using your torso strength to resist. You're using your torso to resist. So, during the pressing motion, this steel cable should be vertical. This is called a cable pushdown. If you stand there and lean back, and the cable is pulling forward, then you end up turning the pressing movement into a pulling movement. In this case, you're not training your back properly, nor are you training your triceps properly. That's the difference. So, when gripping, should you hold it like this? Or like this? It depends on which fingers the member can't grip tightly with. The key is whether you want to focus the effort here or here. If I use this kind of grip with internal rotation, when I exert force outward, these three fingers correspond to the lateral head of the triceps. These three fingers correspond to the long head of the triceps. So, you need to determine whether the issue is with the lateral head or the long head of the triceps, and then decide which part of the fingers should be bearing the force. Where it bears force underneath determines where the force is transmitted above. So at this point, you use this to sculpt the muscle, to refine its definition, especially for those who are going to compete. As I mentioned during the live stream, when you take photos, do you feel that your arms don't look defined, thick, or three-dimensional enough from the front, or is it from the side, or when you do a front double biceps pose, or a back double biceps pose? So in these situations, the areas you need to train are all different. This is some training for triceps pushdowns, and at the same time, it's also useful during your rehabilitation process. For example, if you want to train the stability of your elbow joint, or if you want to push your thoracic spine out when doing dips, or if you want your scapulae to fit well, you need to grip properly. Once you have a good grip, when you do dips, you can also push out your posterior mediastinum, and you can get your scapulae to fit. But if you lose it from the start, then it all falls apart. Don't count on fixing things at the top or expect that the top can be corrected, because the direction of the force transmission has changed and the entire muscle and fascial chain has been broken. How could you possibly transmit force upward in that case? That's the relationship between them. We'll talk about the chest later on. You'll notice that a lot of people, when they're on an incline bench or using an incline machine, are actually training their mid-chest. So why are you even lying on an incline bench? You could just use a flat bench instead. And then a lot of people use triceps training methods to train their back, or use back training methods to train their triceps. It's all mixed up like that. Also, many people are afraid their lateral deltoids won't grow, but they keep training their front delts instead, not really understanding the differences in angles. So pay attention here. What you need to distinguish is the force of the push. The force of pulling and the force of pushing are not at the same point. The pulling force is in front of the pushing point. And then when pressing, it's also in front of the pushing point. When pressing, it can be written like this. It can also be written like this. The key is to see which area you want to train, whether you want this part to bear the force or that part. You can try both and feel the difference. Also, when doing this movement, there's another method. You'll notice that when many people are lifting heavy weights, they move their thumb over like this, right? They move their thumb over like this and then press down like this. So what's the benefit of pressing this way? The advantage is that I can use more weight to make up for the weakness of my other fingers. Otherwise, I can't hold it steady. So I can grip it like this. That is, when pressing, I can do it like this. I can do it like this. See, whether I use 3 fingers or 5 fingers, my wrist won't move out of place. And then, at this point, the main force direction of the cable being pulled is on my forearm, not like this. If you do it this way, you won't be able to train your triceps. If you do it like this, your wrist will take on too much force. It should be like this. Ah, that's one way. That's one way. No matter what, your wrist won't move out of place, and at this point, all the force is focused on the triceps. This method is generally used when you're working with heavy weights to build size. At this time, all 5 fingers are on one side. That is, you need to find a way to place all 5 fingers on top, or 3 fingers on top, or the outer 3 fingers on top. You can first skip training the differences in muscle activation. First, press all the way down, then use these 3 fingers to grip like this and press all the way down. Feel your triceps. Then with these 3 fingers, press all the way down again and feel your triceps. Try pressing all the way down like this and feel it, but no matter how you grip, your wrist must not move around and you must not pull it back. Don't turn the pressing movement into a pulling movement.